I think they got this right. I mean, I heard Booger McFarland, and we played it last hour, arguing for A&M to be up there at 1 or 2 like I was, because I think their resume is strong. And the SEC, what they do, they got 6 of the top 12. They got 9 teams ranked in the top 25. But I thought the most significant piece was, the Big Ten being a three-team conference right now was shown, because Oregon is number 6 in the AP poll, but they were way down at 9. Behind, Indiana and Ohio State are 1-2, with Ohio State being 1. But then their next team isn't all the way till 9, and the 2 Big 12 teams are sitting there at 7 and 8, and they play Saturday. Texas Tech and BYU in Lubbock at 11 a.m. So that's significant. And Ole Miss, being a one-loss team all the way up at 6, where Oregon, you kind of thought they might be, tells you they are rewarding the SEC for being a much better conference, much deeper conference so far. And the ACC doesn't have a team until number 14. With Virginia. That's the highest-ranked ACC team right now.
I think that's pretty accurate, because
and they'd only be getting a team in because of the automatic bid.
Right.
Same with the group of 6, because right now the group of 6 team would be Memphis, and they're not even ranked.
Yeah.
So that's why Texas right now at number 11 wouldn't be in the if you just seeded the tournament.
Right.
Because the Memphis would steal a spot, the ACC champion would steal a spot, and Texas would be just outside.
The first
last
team out.
At number 11. But still a lot of play to come. But that's a lot of times what people, they want the group of 6 to have a seat at the table, and they want each conference champion to play their way in. So the ACC is going to get one, and Memphis, even if they're unranked or somebody like that, is going to get one. All right, let's go to the Game Time Hotline. He is the senior recruiting analyst for both basketball and football, and at On Texas Football. Also grew up a high school basketball star with a son of a football coach, so he knows it all. He's our man, Gerry Hamilton. G-Man, how are you, buddy?
I'm great, guys. How are y'all? Great CFP discussion, by the way. Good lead-in.
Yeah, man. What are your thoughts, takeaways from what you saw? Texas sitting, I guess, pretty, but they control their destiny. Any issues you saw or comments?
No, not really. I mean, look, everybody's going to argue about Notre Dame, right? And I get it. And if you're anti-Notre Dame fan, this is what I've been saying on our YouTube or on TexasFootball.com. Go to Amazon, order a Pitt hat, because Notre Dame plays up there in 2 weeks. Pitt isn't a bad football team. Cheer for Pitt to upset Notre Dame. Then the whole thing's going to get chaotic. So multiple teams could get in at that point. And it won't be Notre Dame being one of them. So that was my number one. And there's going to be arguments. But here's what we knew would happen going into this. It's different from the ridiculous AP pollsters. Texas would be ahead of Oklahoma.
Yes.
And, I mean, that's key, right? And I don't think Oklahoma's done losing games, right? And Texas may not be done losing games. We'll see. But here's the scenarios I'm really looking for in the CFP to see how this plays out. Let's just say if Texas goes 10-2, of course they're in and it's over, and none of this stuff matters where other teams are right now or not, because it's all going to take care of itself. Other people will take losses. If Texas wins at Georgia and then beats undefeated A&M at home, of course they're in, and they're probably going to be seated pretty highly at that point. They're as highly as a 2-loss team can be. So that takes care of itself. But let's say Texas drops one of those games, either the Georgia or A&M. You could argue which one would be better. There is a path for a 9-3 SEC team to get in this year. It was tougher last year. I think this year the path is there, because I'm not sure, based on the rankings last night, that the Big 12 or ACC gets 2 teams in.
Yes.
And that's really what this is going to come down to if there's a 3-loss SEC team that's living off hope, is does the ACC get 2 in? Does the Big 12 get 2 in? Does one of those get 2 in, right, is the key. I think that Georgia Tech loss at NC State, coupled with Miami's loss, was a body blow for the ACC. Because Georgia Tech gave up 50-48 at NC State. That was a body blow for that conference, because that was the 8-0 team, right? Virginia has a loss. Louisville has a loss. If you're the ACC, your best case scenario to play out right now, and Pitt's actually going to be the team that determines a lot of who has a chance to make this college football playoff. And I'm not talking about Pitt. I'm talking about they host Notre Dame, then they go to Georgia Tech, then they host Miami. They're going to have a say in this, even if they're 8-4 team. But the ACC's best case scenario right now is Virginia and Louisville win out. They end up in the ACC championship game. Louisville avenges that loss to Virginia, and then both teams. Louisville's 12-1 and Virginia's 11-2. Then the committee has a decision to make. Right? Do you put an 11-2 Virginia in the in the playoff at that point. The Big 12 is pretty cut and dry for me. It's 2 teams, and it's only 2 because Utah can't get to the Big 12 championship game unless BYU and Tech really falter because they lost to both of those teams.
Right.
So BYU Tech is a pretty big game coming up this weekend in CFP. If BYU beats Tech has to beat them in the Big 12 championship game, get to the Big 12 championship game, not falter, and then beat them in the Big 12 championship game. That would force 2 Big 12 teams in. The question is, if Tech beats BYU this weekend, then they play again in the Big 12 championship game. The winner of that potentially is 12-1. The other has 2 losses. Is that 2-loss team get a bid over a 9-3 Texas in that scenario?
With 3 top 10 wins at that point, right? Because they already own the Oklahoma win, the Vanderbilt win this past week, and whether it's Georgia or A&M in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, so those are the scenarios I'm looking at is if Texas turns out to be a 9-3 team, and we don't know what's going to happen. If they do, what are the scenarios that they could backdoor the number 12 spot this year? And there are scenarios out there for them. The question then becomes, if you're Texas and you're playing the if game, would you rather win at Georgia or would you rather beat 11-0 A&M at the end of the year?
Right.
Hey, Gerry Hamilton on Texas football. Great, guide through that, and that's where we're going in the next month. It'll all play out. Gerry, I know you and I are, pretty much are the constants on the On Texas Football Watch Along, the in-game live with Coach Shipley and Rod Babers and others bouncing in. Jeff Howe, of course, always there as well. So now that when the dust settles and the game ends, we send it off to the On Texas Football postgame show. So I haven't heard your postgame thoughts. Did you lean in more to the first 3 quarters, Texas, and their best performance with a healthy offense and Arch Manning improving, or were you more concerned about the fourth quarter? Which one did you give more weight to from coming out of Saturday?
I give more weight to the first 3 quarters because it's the best carryover of offensive football we've seen this year, and the only time we've seen carryover of offensive football this year. I really like where Texas has gone offensively in that Ryan Wingo is turned into the catch-and-run receiver for Texas. He's been too inconsistent to be the run-and-catch number 1 wide receiver. He just has. There's been too many drops, not enough clean routes. So they have that position well. And then now that Emmett Mosley's back, he's your best run in 50-50 ball catch receiver, and he's in that position. DeAndre Moore, really good as a run and catch receiver that has a little catch and run or little ability after the catch to him. Parker Livingston, more of a run and catch guy that is a sure-handed guy. I think they have these guys positioned really well now in the offense for Arch. I think obviously they've simplified some things, gone back to more 11 personnel. The key with the whole 11 personnel is how's it going to look against Georgia's linebackers.
Sure.
That's the whole key for me. How is that going to – that can look really good against Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, but when you get Georgia and their 4 NFL linebackers, that looks a lot different because those guys close that space on the perimeter so quickly, and that's the problem against Georgia. Now, Georgia's not as good defensively as they have been. They're not as good up front in terms of pass rush, and they're not as good on the back end. So if you control the linebackers, then you have a chance against Georgia. I think one of the great things for Texas against Georgia, which we'll get into in the future, kind of getting off track of your question, is Lane Kiffin showed, not that Steve Sarkisian needs a cheat, every coach needs a cheat of some sort. Lane Kiffin showed how you can have success against this Georgia defense, and I think that's something that needs to be talked about. The Texas defense, look, both starting safeties are out. Sark said at one point, and he's right, that the entire starting secondary was out of the game at the same time. There's parts of that. You can't have the coverage bust that you had in that game. There's no way around that. And against Georgia in 2 weeks, Zechariah Branch may score on a couple of those plays if you're not a little more short tackling in space. So Texas has got to clean some things up in the secondary. That's for sure. But now Texas leads the nation in sacks. And look, A&M probably technically does. They played 1 game less than Texas. But now that Texas is bringing Anthony Hill more in the blitzing role, you're starting to see what Texas can become as a pass rush team. And I think that can only get better with Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, Ethan Burks playing his best football of his Texas career. Guys are coming along there. I think linebackers and coverage, wide receiver and defensive backs, tackling in space are the things I'm looking for, because the Georgia receivers are pretty good players, and the A&M receivers are really good players coming down in the rest of the schedule. So those are the things I'm looking for. But a long answer, trying to make it a little shorter at the end. I take the first three quarters more than the last quarter, with the understanding that if what happened in the last quarter defensively happens at Georgia, it may be a loss because they have better players.
No question. And that's we'll have all next week to get into that. Hopefully we can talk to Gerry and get a scouting report of that Georgia team. You cover recruiting so well. You know some of those names on that defensive side. Hey, Gerry, quickly, just a thought on the basketball team. Lost by 15. They were 10-point underdog going in. Duke is Duke. Played great defense. What did you take, good and bad, from debut of Sean Miller's basketball team?
Yeah, people may call me crazy, but I'm actually a little more upbeat after that game than I was going into the season. Yeah. And look, I think, but I'm one that thinks Sean Miller's a very high-level coach, and maybe an elite coach in college basketball, depending on how you define elite in your own way. But I love the offensive concepts in the half court. That is a real half-court basketball offense. I love the fast execution they want to run, the continuity offense. It's a lot of the similar things that Gonzaga does, Tommy does at Arizona. And you're going to see more glimpses of that as Sean Miller builds out his program and builds out his future rosters. But I really liked what I saw from the half-court offense and where Sean Miller's going with this. Dalen Swain, if he shoots the ball on the perimeter this year, I mean, he's an NBA player, right?
Yeah,
he may be a second-round pick. Maybe he slides into the late first if he really shoots it better. I'm hoping Texas gets 2 years out of him because he's a really good playmaker. Look, I wanted to see Tremont Mark. If there's Duke looks like a 2 or 1 seed team, right, if they stay healthy. They have extreme length on the perimeter. Like, they start 6'5", 6'6", and 6'8", Dame Sarr. Dame Sarr was guarding Tremont Mark for stretches last night.
Yeah.
And for what that does for a team who's trying to score the ball against that, you can play a step away and still have the length to not give a player clean look versus having the crowd and try to take away space and giving up driving angles. So Duke has that rare ability, the way that Shire constructed that team. This isn't the Duke teams of old with a 6'1" and a 6'2" guard. Those days are over. They're going big, long on the perimeter. Even the guards off the bench were 6'4" and 6'5". Texas won't play another team this year that has that perimeter length. And that's not to say they won't play good teams, but that is a uniquely built team from a perimeter length defensively. So Tremont Mark, Simeon Wilcher, they got to play better. Don't get me wrong. Kendall Weaver, he's going to be best in transition and playing on the move. Those guys are going to look different against future opponents. For instance, Arizona State starts 6'1" and 6'3" at guard, and brings 6'3" and 6'3" off the bench. That's a lot different look than Duke and a lot different players, right? And Washington State, very similar, the same 6'3" and 6'3", their top 2 guards. So what you saw last night against Duke with all that perimeter length isn't the norm in college basketball, and it certainly won't be the norm for what Texas plays this year. But they have to play better at the same time and improve within the system. And I really want to see Tremont Mark raise up early in that game and take a couple of threes. I think he got trying to be team runner versus finding that balance, and he's going to have to find that balance. But that balance isn't easy against Duke either because of the length they have. But if you told me going into last night you would get 23 points and 17 rebounds from your 2 bigs, I would have said no chance against Duke. That's something that I really took from last night. Is you wondered, Matas is good feet, he has good hands, he's a skilled big, without being a vertical athlete, and he played well for FAU last year. But how would that carry over to high major basketball? Oh, by the way, he didn't play in either scrimmage. His first high major action truly is against Duke, right?
Yeah, and he played well.
Lucina hadn't played a college game since March of 2024 because he tore his ACL. No scrimmages. Both those guys missed a lot of practice time. What did he do? Yeah, he was rusty. He forced a couple times, but he played well against Duke. His rebounding carried over to high major basketball. Texas is going to be able to rebound. They're going to be able to protect the rim. They're going to be able to defend in the paint. Matas has got to play without fouling as much. But the Centers had 9 turnovers last night. 9. That dog won't hunt at any level of basketball. They have got to clean that up, and the charges count as turnovers, and that's where Matas has to learn to play without fouling. He had one of the highest foul rates in college basketball last year. and a lot of people think, well, that's just on defense. He's got to play under a little more control offensively. He's got the right aggression, but he's got to kind of learn when to use it on the offensive end. Lucina forced a couple, but look, I'm excited. I think Sean Miller's a high-level coach. I think you have a real coach here running real offense, and that's very exciting. I think you'll see more of the fast execution transition against different opponents moving forward. Duke didn't want Texas to get out and run. They wanted Texas to have to play in the half court against their perimeter length, which is what I would do if I were Shire. Sean Miller didn't want to force run in that game, because what happens if you force it, take bad shots, and they get going the other way, transition threes against Duke, and they can't shoot the basketball. So I think both coaches played it a little tighter in terms of not wanting to get into the transition game last night for different reasons. But Duke is a really good basketball team. I think this Texas team has a NCAA tournament ceiling. And I've left every post or every conversation on YouTube or on TexasFootball.com with this. First-year coaches in the portal era that didn't make the NCAA tournament: Danny Hurley at UConn, Todd Golden at Florida, Rick Pitino at St. John's, Chris Beard at Ole Miss, Mick Cronin at UCLA. I could keep going. NCAA tournament is not a given for these guys. They still have to build a program, even in the portal area. But I do like where this Texas team can go. I do think they have the ability to be an NCAA tournament team. And my snapshot of this team will not be after one game. It'll be after 10 games. That's when you get a feel kind of for what this Texas team can truly be. But I like where they're starting out.
Thanks, Gerry. Appreciate it, bud. Good stuff
Gerry.
on CFP, the Longhorns, and football and basketball. Gerry Hamilton on Texas football. And there it is. There's the rundown.